Blog Talk Radio.
When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be confusing. Like Swedish techno confusing.
Bark, bark, meow, meow. Dance with me, purple cow. Bark, bark, meow, meow. Ooh, you lovely cow.
Geico makes it easy. With 24/7 access, all you have to do is go to Geico.com and you could save money on car insurance. It just makes sense. Unlike,
Dance with me, purple cow. I like your move.
Blog Talk Radio.
Franchise interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 9 years we've been asking the franchipreneurs who own one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show today. We're meeting with Mike Reynolds, the Chief Development Officer of Mrs. Winter's Chicken and Biscuits. And Mrs. Winter's Chicken and Biscuits is a chain of quick-service restaurants that cook only the best Southern food in the Southeast. And we're going to talk to Mike about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we have a great show.
The Stone Coat Franchise Opportunity. Are you looking for a unique and lucrative franchise opportunity? If so, take a look at Stone Coat. With a patented process which creates a true stone finish on almost any wall or ceiling, Stone Coat is a true game-changing product in the multi-billion-dollar construction industry. Stone Coat is applied faster, cleaner, and cheaper than conventional quarried stone, which saves both time and money. With advantages in remodel and new construction of both residential and commercial projects, Stone Coat is a true crossover product. The Stone Coat franchise opportunity provides a low startup cost, low operating expenses, comprehensive training, ongoing support, and no royalty payments. For more information on the Stone Coat franchise opportunity, go to www.stonecoatfranchise.com. That's www.stonecoatfranchise.com, or call us at 972-380-2700. That's 972-380-2700.
Franchise Teacher.
Would you like to know how to franchise your concept or grow your franchise business?
Meet the experts at Franchise Teacher.
The goal of Franchise Teacher is to teach, coach, consult, and advise. The team of experts at Franchise Teacher will evaluate your business model and present you with a winning business strategy.
Franchise Teacher will help you decide whether or not your concept works and if it's franchisable. Franchise Teacher is proud to have over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors.
Franchise Teacher are developers of over a dozen franchise systems, which include brick and mortar as well as home-based concepts of nearly 3,000 combined franchise locations.
Whether you need to add more units or get more customers, Franchise Teacher can help. We will teach.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn our proven system.
Coach.
Franchise Teacher will help you provide a game plan to succeed.
Consult.
Franchise Teacher will make sure you stay on track.
And advise.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn from our over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors. Take advantage of our free, no-obligation phone consultation. Simply go to franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
That's franchiseteacher.com, or call us at 561-385-3032.
Hi, this is Connie McDermott, Administrative Assistant for Franchise Interviews, LLC, and you're listening to Franchise Interviews.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 9 years, we've been asking the Franchipreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show today. We're meeting with Mike Reynolds, the Chief Development Officer of Mrs. Winner's Chicken and Biscuits. And Mrs. Winner's Chicken and Biscuits is a chain of quick-service restaurants that cook only the best Southern food in the Southeast. Hi, Mike. How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Marty. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Mike. We always like to ask our guests where they're calling from this morning.
You know, I'm calling from sunny Newport Beach, California today.
Oh, fantastic. And I have a feeling it's sunny there, isn't it?
You know, we're actually getting a pretty crazy heat wave the last couple of weeks. So we actually had a historical high of 108 last week here. So.
Oh, wow. Oh, boy. That doesn't sound too pleasant.
It's a little
well, it's
warm.
great to have you on the show, Mike. You know, I've been reading about you guys over the last month, you know, and I said I was very interested in having you on the show. And, you know, what's interesting about Mrs. Winners is Chicken and Biscuits is, I mean, you really have a long history, don't you? Maybe we could talk a little bit about the history of the company.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, the brand is about 40 years old. The chain has kind of really been, entrenched down there in the South as a kind of your tried and true go-to Southern brand for a long time. And, right. The difference there is really the quality of the product and also a lot of, very Southern products that you won't find at other chains, such as, collard greens and grits and real true Southern food.
So is that how you typically, I'm sure you get the response once in a while, Mike, is that people will say, well, how do you differ from other, other like fried chicken concepts? How do you typically respond to the question?
I think it really is truly the difference in what we serve in terms of our offerings of food. We're famous for our cinnamon swirl, which is a very large cinnamon roll that we serve in the morning hours, made fresh, and topped with some nice warm cinnamon roll, topped with some great icing, and we're also famous for our chicken fried steak sandwiches in the morning, and and then you move right into lunch with probably the best fried chicken, and not being from the South and having eaten a lot of chicken, it was probably the best chicken I ever tasted in my life. So it's just an amazing product.
That's fantastic. There must be some, because the company, I guess, started in the Southeast, Mike, I guess I would imagine that there's a real strong brand loyalty in that part of the country towards Mrs. Winner's Chicken and Biscuits.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We when we were researching, rebuilding the brand, we went back and looked over the last 3 years that the brand's been somewhat dormant, and looked at Facebook posts and the outpouring of loyalty and just the amount of people saying, we just want our Mrs. Winners back. We want our chicken, to the extent where T.I. and T-Pain wrote a rap song about Mrs. Winners coming back to the Southeast. So it's just,
I think I saw that on YouTube, Mike, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty amazing what what the response has been, and just the amount of thank yous we've been getting since we've reopened locations down there.
And I got the feeling that, Mrs. Winner's Chicken and Biscuits, it's also, an experience as well for your customers. The food sounded, amazing, but I think part of it is also, I guess, the experience of Mrs. Winner's Chicken and Biscuits, would you say?
It is, and I think it's also expressed in the people that are franchisees and the people that work within the stores. I was down at our East Point Atlanta store reopening, and just the history that some of the folks came up and talked to me about being in their family car on a Saturday night as a kid,
right.
And that was kind of the go-to location, and just there's a lot of memories, there's a lot of history, and when you say an experience, you really do walk out of there feeling like you've kind of had a participatory experience within the whole community,
right.
And everybody's kind of there, and it's the place to go and the place to meet.
That's fantastic. The majority of our listeners to our show, Mike, we call them aspiring franchipreneurs. Most of them know, that they want to get into franchising. What types of characteristics then, will you be looking for in your franchisees?
Yeah, so I think one of the key components in franchising that I look for, and I've been doing this about 25 years now, and I think what I look for is that passion. Franchisees really have to be passionate about what they do and with the product. It's not just going out and kind of selecting the franchise of the day. It's going out and researching and really believing in what you're going to be selling, because it's that kind of an experience that you give to your customer that when you're so passionate about it, you just want them to have it and you want them to share it with everybody else. And you can't teach that. That's something that really comes from the individual.
That's great. Do you look for experience? I know sometimes, with this type of franchise system, Mike, that some franchises want experience. Is that another trait or skill that you actually look for in getting into the franchise?
Yeah, I think operational restaurant experience is always a great component to get up and running a little bit quicker. But there are many restaurants out there that we have that are operated by general managers that have that food experience and ability to physically run the stores. And a lot of times the owners take on the role of more the administrative side and the business side and keeping the books and making sure everything's running smoothly. So there is a kind of a middle ground there. There's two choices. Do you want to work your store full time? Do you want to engage a manager to do that for you?
That's great. So I guess a typical day really varies, right? I guess as far as what type of role the franchisee wants to serve.
Well, it's been kind of funny. Like I said, with the East Point location, we have owners from the community there who, we really like to try to offer the opportunity for somebody that really didn't have the ability or think they could have the ability to own their own restaurant and promote that within the community. Basically what I've said to franchisees is, bring a cot and put it in the back of the store because you're going to be there a lot. And,
of course.
That was the case with our store opening down there. We had, in East Point, we had literally hour-long waits to get into our drive-thru. So it's been just an amazing response. And, people literally dancing around the lobby, waving drumsticks around, saying, thank God we have poor Mrs. Winter's back. So
that's fantastic.
It's pretty amazing.
That is great. What is the training like, Mike? Once you decide, you like a prospective franchisee and they like you and they do want to come aboard as a franchisee, where is the training typically held?
Yeah, the training is going to be held down in our Atlanta store. And a good portion of your training, probably the majority of your training of a 2-week period is going to be spent in the store, actually physically, learning the ins and outs of the equipment and how to operate it and food safety and, all the issues that we consider, very important as a restaurant company that provides food to the public. And then you're also going to have a component that's going to teach you basically how to operate a small business. So classroom time where you'll learn the basic accounting principles and depending upon where that person is in their life and their skill set will somewhat determine, the extent of the training that we'll give them as well.
That's great. What do you look for in a location, Mike? I mean, is it typically a standalone location, and how much space is typically required to open up a Mrs. Winter's Chicken and Biscuits?
Sure. So we're not your typical, I would say, fast food, retailer.
Right.
We're not looking for Class A, out on the end of the mall type of, pad locations where you're paying, probably a premium cost. We're looking for, very community-driven, almost inner-city type locations where, we're able to, get a very reasonable piece of property. The stores themselves are about 2,500 to, 3,000 square foot restaurants. And then sometimes the owners will purchase, a piece of land and they'll build the restaurant, or they'll lease a building that was formerly another restaurant, where they'll convert it. So it does vary a little bit in terms of sites. But the key is really traffic. We want to see at least 20,000 cars a day going in front of that location and make sure that we've got that visibility.
Yeah, that would make sense. I guess technology is a bit different today than it was 40 years ago, when the company first started. I mean, how's technology being used today, Mike, compared to, against the past, 40 years ago, where it's probably just like a cash register, I guess, at that time, so it's I'm sure the company is utilizing technology today, whether it's through social media or just, some other types of technological driven services.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we've certainly advanced from the shoebox with the money in it for sure. But that goes on. I would say that's more on, the point of service or point of sale machinery that we use, the register systems. Register systems now allow, everything from placing the order and sending it to the back of the house to make the order, to being able to look on your cell phones and literally see your hour-by-hour sales while they're happening.
Right.
So that technology has changed, dramatically in the last 10 years. But in terms of equipment inside the restaurant, I think it's, basically the same thing. We don't use pressure cookers. We use good old-fashioned fryers and, a tried and true recipe, and that's never going to change, because I think, the chicken is really our core item, and there's really only one way to make it, and that's the right way, and that's never going to change. Of course.
That's great. You, in studying your background, Mike, I mean, you've been involved in franchising for quite a long time, and when we have someone like yourself on the show, we always like to ask the question: what advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise? Because we've learned from, doing this show such a long time, there's so much out there today, and a lot of our listeners, they don't even know where to begin their search, to look for a franchise. What would you say to them with all your years of doing this?
Well, I think the first thing, again, is find something that you're passionate about. A lot of times people will just select something because they heard about it from a friend or they heard it on the radio. And that's all fine, and that may be the perfect fit. But ultimately, it's, look at, first of all, your resources financially to what investment level you can handle. A lot of times people undercapitalize their investments in franchises, and that's kind of the number one death knell out there, is not having enough capital to survive your first year and make sure that all the pieces are working correctly. And so I would say that's one big thing. And then in terms of, geography, you want to make sure that your market isn't oversaturated for the type of product that you're going to be putting out there. Competition is healthy, but it's also, can be competition from your own franchisor, and that can make it very difficult to be successful.
Absolutely.
And then I would say, the real thing too is take a very proactive approach to franchising. A lot of times people are a little sheepish in the beginning because they think they're dealing with this big company that they have to impress to get the franchise. But the reality is, they should be asking every possible question they can think of regarding franchising and the opportunity they're going to be putting, a significant amount of their life savings into.
Sure.
And then talk to franchisees, of the concept. There's no better referral source than the people that have actually done it and experienced the support and the type of relationships that they have with the franchisor. So I would say that's very key in terms of your decision making. And hire an attorney. That's always a very important part. A lot of people think that's a step they can skip, but reviewing franchise documents and kind of, when you talk about technology changing, franchise legal documents and the rules have changed, significantly in the last few years as well. So you want to be somewhat versed in that, and an attorney would be your best solution.
Yeah, I think that's well said, and I think it's great advice. I like how you mentioned about asking questions too, Mike. I think it's one of the things I always say to my business students is I say, there's no dumb questions, and I suspect sometimes that and again, you've probably experienced this yourself, is that aspiring for entrepreneurs, sometimes they're afraid to ask those questions, aren't they? You know what I mean? Because they say, okay, well, that's a dumb question. And as you said, there's no dumb questions, are there? You're putting a very big investment into, this franchise, so you should ask as many questions as possible, shouldn't you?
Well, you should, and I think that, when I've sold over, I think, 1,000 franchises in my career, and what I look for is that proactivity, because that's the person that I'm going to see behind the counter or in the restaurant, and if you're not going to be comfortable, dealing with the public or asking questions or feeling being a strong representative of your business, I would have a concern about your ability to operate. But I think one thing I've done, and I've been a CEO of a $60 million franchise, and I've had my own startup franchise. And I always say, here's my cell phone number. And, if I don't care if they're the CEO or they're the local district training manager, you should have access to those people, and they should be comfortable giving you access to them, because at the end of the day, there is no company without a successful franchise system that's making money. And that's what we want to know as CEOs and development officers, is that we're doing everything we can to ensure that the franchisee is making money.
It must be an advantage for you too, Mike, that you have a background on from both sides, having the ability to, work for a franchisor and also owning a franchise as well. I think that probably helps, in the whole process of you describing the franchise and meeting with prospective franchisees as well, doesn't it? Well, you certainly become an advocate of the franchisee very quickly when you go on that side of the fence, And, too often I think franchisors look at franchisees as unit numbers and how fast are we going to grow. And, one of the things I always, talk about when I'm speaking on franchising is, I think one of the biggest concerns I have for companies is when they say, we're going to be 500 units in 5 years. Mm-hmm. That's concerning to me, because it's great to have goals, but at the end of the day, if your strategy is to deliver the best locations with the best franchisees, you're not necessarily going to be counting those numbers the same way. You're going to be looking at what are successful units, and if you have successful units, it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy that you're going to have more units. So it just is very concerning to me, because in year 4, you've got 300 units and you said you're going to do 500, and you're talking about going public. You better, you start franchising with lower standards very quickly, and that's just not the way to build a business. Not a legacy business. Anyway. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's great advice. So I can ask you the next question as the Chief Development Officer. I mean, so where do you see Mrs. Winner's Chicken and Biscuits? If you had to look down the road, Mike, to 3 to 5 years, where do you see the company?
Yeah, so at one point, Mrs. Winner's was close to about a 300-store chain. Before they were acquired, and that company had some financial challenges during the economy downfall. But I see the company probably being, somewhere in the 100 to 150 unit range by that point. But we're going to be looking at, or we are looking at our development markets that we had stores in before, and we're probably cutting our footprints or our original amount of stores in those markets by about half. So just to ensure that there's broader radiuses around the stores that we put in, and that we're not oversaturating a market. So 20% to 25% growth per year is a very logical and thoughtful way to grow a franchise company. And usually it's that that then becomes self-supporting, because the revenues that you're bringing in from the stores tends to balance out with the cost of building the chain.
Do you see the company growing, kind of like crawling up north or to the west? I know, Mike, again, is predominantly like the southeast, but do you see at some point in the future, Mrs. Winters kind of crawling, whether west or north? Do you see that in the future as well?
I really don't, and that's kind of hard to hear from a franchisor.
Sure, no,
when you want to grow, but I've been associated with many chains that they do very well in the market, and they start believing that they're untouchable and they can go anywhere.
Exactly.
And fish tacos from California don't necessarily sell in Ohio. So, with chicken, with Southern
That's
chicken
true.
and kind of our, product mix that we really thrive on, is a different palette than you're going to find certainly in the Northeast or the West Coast.
Right.
So we know our marketplace. We know it makes up probably 5 states, and that builds a very healthy company. And if we start considering the franchise calls that come in that want to put a store in California, and then a lot of franchisors will say, great, sell it. But at the end of the day, you've got to support that store. You've got to get supply chain, so costs are reasonable for that franchisee. So there's a lot of infrastructure that goes with making those types of decisions. And I think that we're better served understanding who our customer is, and also building up. I can't stress enough how the people that we're looking for to become our franchisees know the brand, love the brand, and have that passion, and they're part of that community. So you're literally walking in the store and saying, hi, Jim, or whatever. It's more like the local restaurant that you're going to support, somebody from the community, which is, not something you find. When you go to one of the big players, the big burger guys, everybody knows they're, a conglomerate. So that's not what we want that to feel like. We want it to feel like it's your restaurant, and we're making it for you, and we want you to come back multiple times during the week.
That's great. What's the best way for our listeners, Mike, to get more information on the company as far as becoming a franchisee, or even just Mrs. Winters itself, as far as the product? How can our listeners get more information?
So best starting point would be to go to our website on the web, which is lovemrswinters.com. And then I would also say give us a call on our phone number, which is 877-LOVE-MRS-WINTERS.
That's fantastic. It was great to finally have you on the show, Mike. And, I'd already like to invite you back next year as you continue to grow. I think this is a wonderful concept, and I look forward to learning more.
No, I appreciate it, Marty, and I love talking about franchising. I think franchising is an amazing opportunity for people to live their dreams and even hand it off to their kids in the future.
I think that's well said. It was great to have you on the show, Mike, and we'll be right back with more franchise interviews.
The Stone Coat Franchise Opportunity. Are you looking for a unique and lucrative franchise opportunity? If so, take a look at Stone Coat. With a patented process which creates a true stone finish on almost any wall or ceiling, Stone Coat is a true game-changing product in the multi-billion-dollar construction industry. Stone Coat is applied faster, cleaner, and cheaper than conventional quarried stone, which saves both time and money. With advantages in remodel and new construction of both residential and commercial projects, Stone Coat is a true crossover product. The Stone Coat franchise opportunity provides a low startup cost, low operating expenses, comprehensive training, ongoing support, and no royalty payments. For more information on the Stone Coat franchise opportunity, go to www.stonecoatfranchise.com. That's www.stonecoatfranchise.com or call us at 972-380-2700. That's 972-380-2700.
Hi, this is Connie McDermott, Administrative Assistant for Franchise Interviews, LLC, and you're listening to Franchise Interviews.
Franchise Teacher.
Would you like to know how to franchise your concept or grow your franchise business?
Meet the experts at Franchise Teacher.
The goal of Franchise Teacher is to teach, coach, consult, and advise. The team of experts at Franchise Teacher will evaluate your business model and present you with a winning business strategy.
Franchise Teacher will help you decide whether or not your concept works and if it's franchisable. Franchise Teacher is proud to have over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors.
Franchise Teacher are developers of over a dozen franchise systems, which include brick and mortar as well as home-based concepts of nearly 3,000 combined franchise locations.
Whether you need to add more units or get more customers, Franchise Teacher can help. We will teach.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn our proven system.
Coach.
Franchise Teacher will help you provide a game plan to succeed.
Consult.
Franchise Teacher will make sure you stay on track.
And advise.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn from our over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors. Take advantage of our free, no-obligation phone consultation. Simply go to franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
That's franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
Hi everyone, this is Marty McDermott, the President of Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. Well, one of the shows I strongly recommend listening to if you're an aspiring entrepreneur is Stop Riding the Pine. And the show is hosted by Jamie J. And Jamie is an amazing interviewer. He speaks with entrepreneurs on a variety of topics. And I had the pleasure of appearing on Stop Riding the Pine. And one of the topics that Jamie and I were focusing on were key elements to successful franchising. So this particular clip of Great Quote in Franchising, we're going to call this There's No Creativity in Franchising, and we're going to explain why. What do I want this franchise to do for me? Why are you considering getting into franchising? Because, a lot of times people that get into franchising, Jamie, I think probably should not get into franchising. They'll go into it for the wrong reasons. Well, they'll see the success of one franchise and they'll say, God, I wish I owned one of these. But
right.
That doesn't mean that they should necessarily buy into a Dunkin' Donuts franchise. And sometimes they go into the wrong franchise opportunity. So they might be suited for a franchise, but they're getting into the wrong franchise, So I think you really have to be open, to all the different categories that are out there. Again, going deep within yourself and asking yourself, what do I want this franchise to do for me? If you don't want to work on weekends, then don't get into one of these like children franchises where they're real busy on Saturdays or Sundays. So you have to say, what do I want it to do for me? And you ask yourself those deep-rooted questions.
Perfect. I think that's huge. It's very important for people to not jump into something.
Absolutely, because it's expensive too, Jamie. I mean, a lot of times, you're signing a 10-year contract, which is 10 years of your life. It's a long time, isn't it? I mean, it's
oh my
almost
gosh.
like I won't compare it to the sanctity of marriage, but
Right.
sometimes it goes further than that, I mean, having that 10-year commitment, so it is a very big commitment. Financially, it's a big commitment. I think you have to have the support from your family, whether it's your wife and your children, because the first year, typically, from what I've learned in doing this show such a long time now, is it takes a long time to get it off the ground. Even if it is a Subway franchise or a very recognizable brand name, you're still going to be putting a lot of work into it. So
Right.
you might be missing that time from your family. And sometimes people get into franchising for the wrong reasons as well. Maybe they'll have a bad day at work, and they say, "Oh, I hate my boss."
I'm out of here.
I want to be my own boss. And again, franchising may not be the best alternative for that type of person. There's so many different types of levels of entrepreneurship. Franchising is just one. I mean, you could just initially start your own business where you get to be the creator. There's no, I hate to say this, but there's no creativity in franchising sometimes. I mean, you have to follow somebody else's creation, and that's okay for some people. For me, it wouldn't be. And I'm assuming in getting to know you over time, you might have trouble with that as well, because again, you like to create.
I couldn't get outside of the structure, but I understand why that would be a good thing, because
exactly,
okay, they've been there, they've done that. You won't make the same mistakes that the original franchisor made, because they found the solutions along the way, and that's part of the attraction for franchise.
Exactly. I published. It sounds like I'm bragging, Jamie, but I just got one of a paper published in.
You deserve it.
A journal. If you'd like to hear that whole interview with Jamie J of Stop Riding the Pine, all you have to do is go to stopridingthepine.com, and you can hear the whole podcast. And lastly, we just want to thank everyone for making this podcast such a big success. It's hard to imagine that we've been doing it now 10 years ago. It was one of the things I was talking about with Jamie on the show, is the longevity of the show. Is what started out to be a 1-month project turned out to be 10 years. So I just want to thank everyone for listening to the podcast and making it such a success. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you again soon with another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising from Franchise Interviews. Take care, everyone.